Have you ever had that feeling that you were exactly where you were supposed to be, right on track, and then suddenly, for no clear reason, everything just stopped? It wasn't laziness, it wasn't lack of discipline, it wasn't because you're weak or incapable. You were doing well, maybe even really well, and then something inside you started to lock up. A quiet voice, almost too soft to hear, whispering things like, "This is too big for you," or "What if you fail right when everyone's watching?" Or even, "Do you really deserve this?" And you stopped. Maybe you told yourself you'd delay the project for a week, then another week, then you lost count. Maybe you walked away from a relationship that was just starting to bloom because a dull, heavy anxiety kept telling you you'd get hurt sooner or later. Maybe you turned down a promotion, an opportunity, an important conversation. Not because you didn't want it, but because a part of you went into panic before you even had time to understand what was happening. If any of this feels familiar to you, I need you to stay with me until the end of this video, because what I'm about to show you is not a productivity trick. It's not a list of morning habits. It's not another piece of content telling you to wake up at 5 a.m. and fix your life in 30 painless days. What I'm going to show you goes much deeper than that. There is a part of you, a part you probably don't even have a name for, that is right now sabotaging your life's purpose. Not because it's evil, not because it wants you to fail, but because it's terrified. It's been terrified for a very long time, and somewhere in your story, it learned that growing is dangerous. Being seen is dangerous. Wanting too much is dangerous. This part has a name. In Jungian psychology, it's called the shadow, and the anxiety you feel, especially the kind that shows up right before an important step, is not a defect. It's not a disorder that defines you. It's a signal. It's the shadow rising, asking for your attention, asking you to look at it instead of running away again. I know this might sound abstract right now. You might be thinking, okay, but what does that actually change? What do I do tomorrow morning when the anxiety shows up again and I have a big decision to make? That's exactly what this video is here to answer. Over the next few minutes, and yes, it's a long video, but every minute matters, I'm going to show you how the shadow works inside you, how it hijacks your energy, how it quietly distorts your choices, and how, in 30 days of honest, steady work, you can begin to integrate this part of yourself instead of running from it. Integration doesn't mean eliminating anxiety. It means no longer being ruled by it. It means you can feel fear and still take one step forward. It means that purpose you feel inside you, that thing you know deep down you came here to do, can start breathing again. Stay with me. This might be the turning point you didn't even realize you've been waiting for. But before we begin, I need you to do one thing right now. Put your phone on silent, close the other tabs, take one slow, deep breath, because what you're about to hear will require your presence. It will ask you to look inward without looking away the moment it gets uncomfortable. Can you do that? Then let's begin together. Before I tell you the story that's going to change the way you see your anxiety, I need to do one thing first. I need us to slow down together for a moment. We live in a world that is constantly demanding speed. Answer fast, decide fast, grow fast, get over it fast. And when you can't keep up, when you freeze, when you get stuck, when it takes you longer than expected to move through something, the world calls you weak. It calls you undisciplined. It tells you the problem is you. I'm here to tell you that's not how human beings work. You are complex. You have a history, layers, parts of you that were shaped during times in your life when you had no control over what was happening. And those parts don't disappear just because you decided to grow. They don't vanish because you read a self-help book or spent 6 months in therapy. They stay, they wait, and they show up precisely in the moments when your life is asking you to become bigger than you've ever been. That isn't weakness, that's being human. The work I'm going to invite you into today is adult work. It's the kind of work that asks you to treat yourself with the same seriousness you would give any important project in your life, with rigor, with discipline, but also with deep compassion for who you've been and for who you're trying to become. There are no shortcuts here, but there is a path, and it's more accessible than you might think. Take a breath. You're in the right place. I want to introduce you to Marcus. Marcus is 34. He lives in a big city, works as a marketing analyst at a mid-sized company. On paper, his life looks organized. He has his own apartment, a girlfriend, a stable job, friends, weekend plans. But Marcus wakes up every day with a feeling he can't quite name. It's almost like he's late. Not late for a meeting, not late for something specific, late for his own life. He knows, not in his head, but in his chest, that he came here to do something more. He doesn't know exactly what, but he knows this isn't it. He knows there's something inside him that's never really been used. A capacity, a calling. At 6:47 on a Tuesday morning, his alarm goes off. He doesn't wake up startled. He's been awake since 5:30, staring at the ceiling. The thought that woke him early is still looping in his mind. Today I'm going to start. Today he's going to open the document that's been sitting on his desktop for 6 months. Personal project, ideas. A blank document, just a title, nothing else. He gets up, bathroom, brushes his teeth without really looking at his own face. His phone sits on the sink. A work group notification. Alignment meeting at 10. He swipes, marks it as read. At breakfast, while waiting for the water to boil, he opens Instagram, automatic scrolling. A guy his age, someone he met at an event 2 years ago, just posted a new video online. 240,000 views in 3 days. Marcus taps, watches 30 seconds, closes it. Not envy, he would say if you asked him, but that feeling comes back, of being late. The coffee's ready. He sits down, opens his laptop. The document is there. He clicks. The cursor blinks in the middle of a white screen, and then he feels it. It's subtle, so subtle most people go their entire lives without recognizing it. It starts in his chest, a small tightening, climbs up his neck, reaches his jaw, which quietly locks. The thought that comes with it isn't loud or dramatic. It's small, almost reasonable. I don't know where to start. And that thought opens a door. Through it, others walk in. What if I start wrong and waste time? What if this isn't really for me? What if I try and I'm not good enough? What if people think I'm full of myself? 45 seconds later, Marcus has closed the document, opened his email, and convinced himself today isn't the right day because he has too much on his mind. The coffee gets cold. This cycle will repeat 4 more times that week. Wednesday night, early Thursday morning, Saturday afternoon when his girlfriend goes out. Sunday night, that quiet moment between dinner and sleep when weekend melancholy sets in. Every time, it's the same pattern. The intention rises, the document opens, the anxiety appears. Marcus closes it. Now, a different moment. Friday night, Marcus is at a bar with friends. After the second beer, sometime past midnight, he starts talking. He tells them about an idea he has, not in detail, but his eyes light up. His voice changes. His hands move more. One friend says, "Man, that's really good. You should actually do that." Marcus smiles, and for a moment that feeling of being late disappears. He's present, whole, alive. The following Monday, 6:47 a.m., the alarm goes off. The cycle begins again. What keeps Marcus from starting is not lack of ability, not lack of ideas, not lack of desire. The desire is there every time his eyes light up talking about it. What stops him is a mechanism built decades ago, back when showing himself fully came with a very high cost. Marcus's anxiety is not about the document. It's about what the document represents. It's about what happens if he truly tries and fails. About a part of him that learned very early that wanting too much is an invitation to humiliation. And that part doesn't disappear just because Marcus is now 34, with his own apartment and enough maturity to know things are different today. It operates backstage. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't introduce itself. It simply shows up and in 45 seconds closes the document. It has a name, and when the shadow has a name, it begins to lose its power. But before we talk about that name, I need to show you the signs that it may already be operating in your life, because maybe you're not Marcus. Maybe your shadow shows up in a different way, and I need you to be able to recognize yourself in what comes next. The signs are more subtle than you might think. Most people associate anxiety with obvious symptoms: a racing heart, panic attacks, catastrophic thoughts you can clearly see are irrational, and that kind exists. It's real, and it deserves attention. But there's another kind, one that operates quietly, that disguises itself as logic, that looks like caution, that convinces you you're being responsible when you're actually avoiding. I call this purpose anxiety, and its signs look like this. First sign, perfection as delay. You don't start because conditions aren't perfect. You need more time, more knowledge, more clarity. You'll begin when you're ready, and you're never ready, because ready is a finish line your mind keeps moving just a little farther away, like a horizon. You probably know someone who is always preparing but never doing, taking courses about the course they plan to take, planning the life they'll start once they're fully prepared. That isn't diligence. That's anxiety dressed as diligence. Is there a project, a change, a conversation you've been getting ready for more than 6 months? Second sign, the body doesn't lie. Remember Marcus's 45 seconds, that tightening in the chest, the locked jaw, the shallow breathing. That's your nervous system registering a threat. Your brain doesn't distinguish between a lion in the wild and a blank screen waiting for you to begin. When the shadow senses you're about to expose yourself, it hits the alarm. And then you close the document, you postpone the conversation, you don't call back, not because you don't want to, but because your nervous system decided it was dangerous before you even processed what was happening. Have you noticed this? A sudden wave of nausea, unexpected fatigue, a random distracting thought that appears out of nowhere. That's not coincidence. That's the alarm. Third sign, elegant sabotage. This one is the most deceptive because it doesn't look like sabotage. It looks like responsibility. You were about to launch, but decided to rethink the name. You were about to have the difficult conversation, and suddenly something more urgent appeared. You reserved the weekend for what truly matters and ended up helping everyone else with their priorities. You were making progress, then decided to change everything and start over from zero. Elegant sabotage is the shadow operating through your intelligence. It builds traps that look like the smartest decisions you could possibly make. Fourth sign, the energy cycle. You start something with full energy, focus, clarity, conviction, and then, days or weeks later, the energy disappears. You wake up without drive, without belief, without certainty that it's worth it, and you interpret that as a sign maybe it wasn't right for you, but it isn't random. It's a pattern. Every time you reach a real level of commitment to what truly matters, the shadow steps in and drains the energy because energy directed toward your purpose feels threatening to it. Have you ever lost momentum in the middle of something important and had no idea why? That's the fourth sign. Fifth sign, paralyzing comparison. You see someone doing something similar to what you want, and instead of feeling inspired, you freeze. You measure the distance between where they are and where you are. And that distance makes starting feel pointless. They're years ahead. She already has an audience. There are so many people doing this better. So you don't start, or you start and then stop. Comparison doesn't motivate you. It extinguishes you. That isn't realism. That's the shadow using reality as a weapon. If you recognized yourself in at least 3 of these 5 signs, pay very close attention to what comes next, because now I'm going to show you where all of this comes from. And when you understand the origin, everything will begin to make sense in a way that feels both deeply liberating and a little hard to face. The shadow has a name, and when the shadow has a name, it begins to lose its power. The idea of the shadow comes from the work of Carl Jung. He spent decades studying what he called the unknown side of ourselves. Everything we repress, everything we deny, everything we hide, everything we never developed because at some point we learned it was unacceptable, dangerous, or simply not allowed. The shadow is not the evil inside you. That's a simplification that completely distorts the idea. The shadow is simply what was pushed into the dark, and anything left in the dark for too long becomes distorted. It becomes frightening. It becomes more powerful than it actually is. But I want to go beyond theory. I want to take you to a very specific moment. Imagine a 7-year-old child. Let's call her Anna. Anna has a vivid imagination. She invents stories, draws characters, spends hours creating worlds that exist only for her. One day, she decides to show her family what she made. She walks into the living room, holding the papers, eyes shining. Her father is watching TV. He glances at the drawings for 3 seconds. "Looks nice," he says, and turns back to the screen. Her mother is on her phone. That's cute, Anna. Put it in your room. Her brother walks past in the hallway. Childish. Anna goes back to her room. She puts the papers in a drawer. She never shows them again. Over time, she stops drawing. The imagination didn't disappear. It went into the drawer along with the papers. 30 years later, Anna is 37 and works in accounting. She's competent, respected, but every morning she wakes up with the quiet feeling she's living in the wrong place. Sometimes she thinks she'd like to create something, tell stories, but every time that thought appears, an inner voice immediately answers, "That's childish." The voice has no face. She doesn't know where it came from, but it's so automatic, she almost never questions it. That's the shadow in action. Now let's go back to Marcus. At some point in his life, maybe a moment he never put into words, maybe not even to himself, he learned that being seen was dangerous. Maybe it was a school presentation where he stuttered and classmates laughed. Maybe it was sharing an idea with excitement and being met with doubt. Maybe it was a small public failure that would seem trivial to an adult, but to a 9-year-old felt devastating. The exact event doesn't matter. What matters is what he learned. When I show myself fully, when I take a risk, when I step forward as I am, I get hurt. That learning was buried. A child's mind can't process pain like that, so it does something simpler and much more radical. It hides the pain in the shadow and builds a protective mechanism around it. Marcus's mechanism is called anticipatory anxiety. Every time he's about to expose himself, open the document, start the project, commit to what matters, the mechanism activates, and it produces exactly the discomfort needed to make him retreat. It's protection, a dysfunctional protection now, one that has become an obstacle, but when it was created, it was necessary. Does that change how you see your anxiety? If anxiety is a defect, you treat it like an enemy. You try to suppress it, fight it, and while you're busy fighting, you go nowhere. But if anxiety is an outdated protection, still operating by rules from a world that no longer exists, then the work changes. It's not about eliminating it. It's about listening, understanding, integrating. When the shadow has a name, it begins to lose its power. The name of Marcus's shadow is, "I am not worthy of being seen." What is the name of yours? You don't need to answer now. Just hold that question, because the answer is at the very heart of everything that comes next. There is an archetype that shows up again and again in the lives of people who struggle with purpose anxiety. Carl Jung described archetypes as universal patterns of behavior and experience, primordial images that live inside the collective unconscious of humanity, inner characters that all of us carry, regardless of culture or personal history. The archetype that most often sits behind purpose anxiety is what I call the waiting adult. It's the part of you that got frozen in a permanent state of preparation. It grew in your body, in your vocabulary, in your daily responsibilities, but emotionally, it's still waiting for a permission that never came. Permission from who? That depends on your story. It might be from a parent who never truly approved, an authority figure who taught you that you had to prove your worth before you deserved space. Society itself, which has very clear ways of signaling who is allowed to step forward and who isn't. Or even from an idealized version of yourself you still haven't become. But here's the truth. That permission is never going to arrive from the outside. It never will, because it doesn't exist out there. It's internal. It has to be reclaimed, because once, a long time ago, you had it. You were born with it. Let me show you how this archetype operates in everyday life. Scene 1. Renata is 41. She's been a nurse for 15 years. She loves what she does, but for the past 2 years, she's wanted to start an online channel about mental health for people who care for elderly family members. She sees the need, she has the knowledge, she has a warm, clear way of speaking, but every time she sits down to record, she thinks, who am I to talk about this? There are psychologists, experts, I'm just a nurse. So she doesn't record. The waiting adult, waiting for a credential that will never arrive. Scene 2. Ricardo is 28. He's played guitar since he was 12. He sings in tune, writes songs that everyone who hears them says are beautiful. For 5 years, he's been almost ready to post his music online. He needs the right microphone, needs to learn production, needs a clearer identity, but deep down, Ricardo knows none of that is what's missing. What's missing is the courage to be judged, to put something real from inside himself into the world and see what happens. The waiting adult, waiting for conditions that will never be perfect. It's understandable because it was created to protect you, but it's costly because while you wait, life keeps moving. Purpose, when it isn't lived, doesn't disappear. It grinds. It creates a dull ache underneath everything, in the heaviness of Sunday night, in the look in your eyes when you see someone else doing what you wish you were doing. Look closely. I need to show you the trap. It's subtle. It will very likely show up while you're watching this, and it may have already appeared. And if I don't point it out now, it will quietly undo everything we've built together so far. The trap looks like this. You understand everything I've said. You recognize yourself in Marcus's story. You clearly see the waiting adult in your own life. You have a real moment of insight, that feeling of, now I finally get what's happening to me. And then you close the video feeling like something changed, but nothing changed. Because understanding is not transformation. Insight is not change. Knowing why you do something is the first step. An essential step, but it is only the first step. And the anxious mind has a very clever trick. It turns understanding into yet another form of preparation. Now that I understand the shadow, I need to study more. I should read more psychology, learn more about archetypes, prepare properly before I try to integrate it. The shadow loves it when you study it, instead of facing it. I'm not saying learning is useless. I'm saying learning without action is just another elegant way to avoid. Shadow integration does not happen in your head. It happens in your life. It happens when you open the document and write the first sentence, even if you don't know whether it's good. It happens when you record the first video with your face flushed and your voice shaking. It happens when you have the conversation you've postponed for 6 months, not knowing what comes next. There's another trap, maybe an even more dangerous one, using your understanding of the shadow as a new form of self-judgment. I know I'm sabotaging myself. I know it's the shadow, so why can't I act? And then you judge yourself for sabotaging, then you judge the judging, and you build layer upon layer of self-criticism, until you're more paralyzed than you were with the original anxiety. That's not how this works. Integration is a process. It has stages. It has bad days, setbacks, moments when you close the document all over again. And that is not failure. That is part of the process. What I'm about to propose to you is a practice, a 30-day practice. Not a cure, not a magical solution, a concrete starting point with specific actions that begin to create a new relationship between you and the part of you that is afraid to be seen. 30 days, not enough time to transform everything, but enough time to create a shift in perception that changes your axis. This practice has 4 weeks, each one with a specific focus, each day with a core exercise that takes no more than 15 to 20 minutes, and each week builds on the one before it. Before we begin, you need to understand the logic. Purpose anxiety works through avoidance. The more you avoid what triggers it, the stronger the trigger becomes. Neuroscience calls this sensitization. The fear circuit gets reinforced every time you activate it and then retreat. The only way to reduce that sensitivity is gradual exposure, consistent, present, and compassionate, not brute force. This practice is not about forcing yourself to do what you fear. It's about learning to stay with the fear while you act. That difference changes everything. Week 1. Naming. The focus is simple and radical. To name what is happening in real time. Every day for 7 days, you do one practice. The shadow journal, 15 minutes, morning or night, whatever works, answering 3 questions. First, when today did I feel anxiety appear connected to something I want or need to do? Second, what happened in my body at that moment? Where did the anxiety show up? How did it feel? Third, what thought or belief came with that sensation? Why does this matter? Because what you don't name, you don't see. And what you don't see, you cannot change. The journal creates distance. You shift from being the anxiety to observing it. It sounds simple. It's one of the most powerful shifts you can make. By day 4, you'll feel resistance. That's the shadow trying to stay in the dark. Keep going. By day 5, something begins to change. Patterns start to appear. Important: do not analyze, do not fix, do not solve, just write. This week is about observation. On day 7, read the previous 6 days and write one sentence. Every time I'm about to commit to what truly matters, my mind tells me. Finish the sentence. That's the name of your shadow. Keep it, you'll need it. Week 2, tracing. You continue the journal but add a 4th question. Where did this come from? There is no correct answer. It's a question that opens space. You ask it and stay with whatever appears. An image, a scene, a memory. Sometimes nothing comes, and that's okay. The act of asking already begins to move what was frozen. You also add body mapping. Once a day, for 5 minutes in silence, you scan your body for low-level anxiety. That constant background tension many people don't even notice anymore. Is your neck tight, shoulders raised, jaw clenched, breathing shallow? You don't fix anything. You simply notice. I'm noticing tension in my shoulders. That act of noticing activates the prefrontal cortex and literally reduces the intensity of the threat response. You're not relaxing. You're changing your nervous system chemistry. On day 5, take the name of your shadow and ask, when was the first time I felt this? Sit quietly. Let whatever comes, come. If a memory appears, stay with it for a few minutes. Just acknowledge, this is where this part of me learned this pattern. If something very heavy arises, seek professional support. This practice is for awareness, not trauma processing. On day 7, write a short letter, 1 page, address it to the child or teenager connected to that memory. Write what that younger version needed to hear, but never did. You don't share it. It's an act of internal repair, a way of saying, I see what happened. You don't need to protect me this way anymore. Week 3, moving. This is the most concrete week, and likely the hardest. Every day, you choose one micro-action connected to what you want to build. A micro-action has 3 qualities. It takes no more than 15 minutes. It is concrete and measurable, and it is slightly uncomfortable, but not overwhelming. Example, write 1 paragraph about the idea you've been avoiding. Send the message you've postponed. Research something you need for your next step. Record a 2-minute voice note explaining your idea. Not to post, just for you. Open the blank document and write a title, small enough that your mind can't build a strong argument against it. I have 15 minutes. Is hard to fight. That's the strategy. While acting, you practice tracked presence. You observe what happens in your nervous system. The anxiety rises, the voice tries to stop you. You name it. I'm noticing the urge to stop, and you continue for 30 more seconds, then 1 more minute, until you finish. The goal is not to remove anxiety. It's to learn that you can act with anxiety present. That is the core skill, not eliminating fear, but discovering it doesn't have to be in charge. On day 5, you increase the dose. Your micro-action must be something you labeled, I'm not ready yet, and you do it anyway. On day 7, you reflect, what was different this week? What did I do that I couldn't do before? It doesn't matter how small it was. What matters is this. Did you act with anxiety present? This record begins to rewrite your story about yourself. Week 4, integrating. Now the work is synthesis and consolidation. The journal continues. You can reduce it to 3 days a week if daily felt too much. What matters is that it doesn't disappear. Body mapping becomes a 2-minute ritual before any important action, before opening the computer for your project, before a difficult conversation. 2 minutes. Scan, name what's present. Micro-actions continue, but now they can grow. 15 minutes can become 30. 1 paragraph can become a section. 1 message can become a call. And you add a new practice, dialogue with the shadow. Once this week, in a quiet moment, you open your journal and write a conversation between you and the part of you that is afraid. Not confrontation, conversation. You ask, what are you afraid will happen? Let that part answer. Write freely, then respond with the voice of the adult you are today. I understand your fear. It made sense once. And I need you to know I can handle what comes now. You can rest a little. On the last day, day 30, you make one decision, not about your whole life, about the next step, only the next one, and you execute it that same day, not tomorrow, that day. It might be the first 300 words of your project, buying the equipment you've been postponing, making the call you've avoided, publishing the first piece. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be real. That is the closing gesture of this practice and the opening gesture of the next phase of your life. 3 lines on paper. I want to tell you what happened to someone. Let's call her Camilla, who did this exact 30-day practice. Camilla was 31, and for 5 years, she had wanted to write a book, not a grand one, a small, honest book about caring for her father with Alzheimer during the last years of his life. She had the material. She had the experience. She had a notebook full of fragments, scenes, and memories, but she couldn't really start the book. At the end of week 1, the sentence she wrote was, "Every time I'm about to commit to what matters, my mind tells me that this pain doesn't deserve to be turned into art, that it's presumptuous of me to think anyone would care." She stared at that sentence for 3 minutes. It was the first time she'd ever seen that thought outside her head, and seeing it outside, it looked different, less truth, more belief, less fact, more wound. In week 2, the memory that came up was of a high school teacher. He read one of her texts aloud in front of the class and laughed, saying she exaggerated her feeling. The class laughed. That day, she never handed in another personal text. 14 years later, a comment that lasted 20 seconds still decided what she was allowed to create. In week 3, her first micro-action was simple. Open the notebook, pick one scene, and rewrite it. No thinking about the whole book, no worrying about quality. She wrote 3 lines. 3 lines about the moment her father looked at her and didn't recognize her for the first time. Just 3 lines, but it took 40 minutes because she stopped, breathed, came back, stopped again, and kept going. On day 30, Camilla had 12 pages, not a book, 12 pages of a beginning. And when she described what had changed, she didn't say, "I wrote 12 pages." Oh, she said one simple thing: "I learned that I can write with the fear present. I don't have to wait for it to go away." And that's it. That's the change. 3 lines on paper, then 3 more. Then 3 more. Purpose doesn't require you to be without fear. It requires only one thing, that you move 3 lines. Even with it there, you made it this far. That's not small. You could have closed this video at any point. You could have slipped back into your feed to something easier, lighter, but you stayed. And that tells me something about you. You're ready. Not completely ready, no one is, but ready enough for the next step. The purpose you feel inside, that thing that shows up when you're most present, most alive, most yourself, wasn't placed there by accident. And the shadow trying to stop you from living it isn't your enemy. It's a part of you that needs to be integrated, not destroyed. The 30-day practice is a beginning. The shadow won't disappear in that time. But in 30 days, you can create something more valuable than the absence of anxiety. Proof that you can act with it present. That proof, the tangible evidence you make for yourself, is what rewrites the story. Not insight, not understanding. Action. 3 lines on paper. If this touched something in you, I need one thing. Leave a comment below with the sentence that completes your shadow. Every time I'm about to commit to what matters, my mind tells me that write it here. Because naming it in a place where someone will read it is a small act of courage, and a huge one all at once. The next video on this channel will show you what happens after the 30 days, when the shadow comes back, because it will, and what to do with it in round 2. Until then, the shadow has a name, and when it has a name, it loses power. Take care of yourself.